Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to Genesis number 34. And no skeleton cruel today. We've got the whole gang here today. Should we jump right into it, or does anybody have any opening comments?
Well, I I have to say I'm not a huge fan of the fact that this is my birthday text because trigger warning. Um,
Hmm.
it's a very uncomfortable chapter and very unkind to women and everybody. But yeah, so heads up.
And I'd just like to say one thing before we start. The reason I was so quiet last week and so shy to do YouTube on my own, Lilith, is because I have learning difficulties. And my
We
mum
already knew you were
thought,
British.
it's not that, King Xerxes. I have something called cone rod dystrophy,
Oh,
Oh, okay.
which is an eye condition.
Okay.
Yeah, by the way, Americans cannot make fun of British for being uneducated.
that is
And
true.
I also have attention deficit disorder,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to work out how that levels with there even being a god in the first place.
Oh, the good news is you don't have to think it does here. I certainly don't.
Yeah.
And having been an atheist for what 28 years now, I don't either.
Yes,
High
I
five.
And 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 as I said last week, that came from the second sermon I ever got at school,
Hmm.
which was the "Don't be gay, kids" sermon.
Oh, right. Yes. Very important issue to tackle with 5-year-olds.
And
Yeah,
the other thing I will say, Lilith, is we don't have um animal crackers here
Oh.
in the UK because we have other we have other flavors of crisp.
Mm-hmm.
We have, I don't know whether you've ever had prawn cocktail, for instance.
Actually, when I lived in Toronto, I would often go to there'd be little British shops that would bring in candy and crisps and everything from the UK. And during the World Cup, they had flavors for every different team, and voted on who would win the crisp World Cup. And so I have tasted some very interesting crisps, but I come from Canada, where we have ketchup chips, which the poor benighted Americans do not have. Dill pickle, which I think a few Americans have, but not most, and all dressed, which is divine.
Did you say ketchup chips?
Yes.
That sounds awful.
yeah. Why
I
are we talking
I
about
think
this?
I have had
I
them
have no idea.
before because
Okay.
we've had special like summery flavors before, like curry, and
I've seen some odd
so
things
we've
in
had
the world.
foreign flavors before here in the UK. So
Fair enough. And it's an odd world. But I believe Lalandra volunteered to read this as we're getting into Genesis 34 to read
Yep.
this
And
week.
before we start into the all that negativity, happy birthday, Lilith.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy
I did want
birthday.
to offer something to Adam, and I don't know if this is something that you would be a fan of, but I have a friend of mine who is part of like the atheist group that I hang out with in my personal life, and he suffers from cerebral palsy, and he has a shirt that says, "I might be disabled, but at least I'm not a creationist."
I do like that, King
Ooh.
Xerxes.
But
if I'm
let me
honest.
clarify. The word is not disabled on the shirt. It's the R word for disabled people. So
Ah,
I don't know if you'd be okay with that, but it's pretty funny.
yeah.
He does get a
Al-
lot of old women complaining at him.
Well, I probably got labelled as that at school, really, because I had this one really bad teacher who told me that no one was ever going to want me again.
Oh, that's lovely.
This
Well-
was a priest, right? This was a Church of England
No,
school.
This
Oh,
was
it wasn't a priest.
this was the year 6 teacher.
Hmm.
But it was a Church of England school, right?
It was a Church of England school, yes, but it
Ah,
was a fully trained, probably
okay.
atheist teacher. But I
wow.
suspect the thing with her was her husband had gone off with another woman.
Ah, always a
Because
cheerful prospect.
obviously I'm a man, she sort of projected that onto me a
Okay.
bit.
Okay, I don't know enough
Yeah.
to
Sorry
say
about
anything
all that. Let's dive into the Bible now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Wait,
And
Alondra is a bit
you
I
faint?
can't hear her very well.
Okay. How about
Welcome to my
now?
world.
How about now?
There
yeah,
you go.
better.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I'm sure that Xerxes didn't mean it this way, but there are more disabilities than mental retardation, and I don't even think people use that word anymore in the medical community. I think it's intellectual disability. People have other things besides, like, I guess I don't know how disabling it is. There's autism, you know. You don't necessarily have an intellectual disability just because you have autism. Some people do, though.
It's a
So-
huge
Yeah,
range.
well, wait, but my
It's
friend
a
who
spectrum.
wears the shirt has cerebral palsy, so
Yeah,
it's not even an intellectual disability. But he
yeah,
just wears the shirt because it ruffles people's feathers.
yeah.
I
And
can
people
see
kind
that.
of throw that word around as an insult a lot. So I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's why I didn't use it, but I wanted to clarify that that's what the shirt actually says, in case he goes looking it up to buy it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyways, here we go. Now, before we started into all this negativity, because, trigger warning, it's rape, okay? We have to get out of the way. Tomer, right? Tomer? Or
Yeah.
Tomer? Tomer? Tomer?
You can say however you want. I say Tomer, but I'm
I
not
don't
gonna
think we
fault you on how
can
to
say
pronounce
Tomer.
it.
Tomer.
Yeah.
Tomer. I can't get that at the end.
You
Okay.
can say Tomer, whatever you want.
Just call him Tom. Hey, Tommy.
Yeah.
You got to excuse us. We're Americans, so we're linguistically challenged.
But you have to stay in Joe Pesci's accent.
Okay. Tomer. I don't know. I can't do it. See how bad I am at
However you
male
want.
accents?
However you want. I don't care.
Okay.
I really don't care. The
Tomer.
accent doesn't matter.
Tomer. Earlier, he shared the pronunciation of one of the main characters in this part of this chapter as Dina.
Dina, yeah.
Yes, and I had a Jewish student once named Adina, but I don't know if that name's related.
I don't think so. Because Adina, I think it derives from Edna or Eden, which means I think pure or gentle.
She was a nice girl, and but in America, we say in the Western part of the world, the English speaking part of the world, we say Dinah. Like there's like Dinah Shore. Like older people have this name, I guess. I can't think of a new person that has it.
Yeah,
But
Sleep in
anyways,
the Kitchen with Dinah is not
Well,
exactly a modern song.
yeah.
I have an aunt named Dina, but she doesn't have an H in her name.
Maybe a different language.
Don't know.
But anyways, so let's get that out of the way. Lilith brought it up. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen. I know someone's in the kitchen with Dinah, strumming on the old banjo. So that bit of silliness, and now for the seriousness. Okay, here we go. And should I say Dina or Dinah?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
Whatever you want.
Okay, and for the Americans, and Dina, not Dina, and then I said Dina, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, was that good, Tomer?
Shechem, but
Shechem. I was anticipating.
Always more phlegm, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Shechem. I see. I'm turning it on too soon. Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her. He took her and lay with her and defiled her. So, like, I'm going to keep reading, but how is it she went by herself? You know,
That
in a strange
does seem
land.
very unusual in that culture. And I granted she was visiting other women. But yeah, it's strange.
Okay. Verse 3. And his soul clave unto to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel and spake kindly unto the damsel. You know, after raping her, but okay. And Shechem spake unto his father Hamor, saying, Get me this damsel to wife. And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his cattle in the field, and Jacob held his peace until they were home. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. And the sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel, in lying with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. And Hamor communed with them, saying, The soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give him to wife. And make ye marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. And ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye therein, and get your possessions therein. And Shechem. Okay, we're
I got to
okay,
interrupt because the Shechem is becoming anti-Semitic at this point.
Yeah, I'm anticipating it too much and doing the too soon.
Yeah, just stress that the second part of it, Shechem. Don't worry about the phlegm. Just say Shechem. I think that'll be better.
Yeah. So let's start with my commentary. So verse 2, he took her and raped her. That's the NIV. It says that it raped her. The Hebrew Bible says vaye'anea, which means in modern Hebrew it derives from inui, which means torture, to torture her. So that the JPS translates this as disgraced her.
I think what she read was defiled.
Yeah,
and I have an NIV and it says violated her, but I actually did want to address this.
The NRSV says lay with by force.
Yeah, because I've read the law, the whole law, all the books of the law. And there is no distinction made between in the punishment when you're talking about a girl who is not engaged, not married, and sleeps with a man. There is no distinction made over whether or not she consented. So she's married off to him. So that means that the same law would apply both to a forceful assault and to a couple of young people scampering off into the bushes.
When is consent ever even relevant?
Well, that's the thing, is that girls don't. The consent is relevant, but it's the consent of the father.
But not in the Bible.
Oh, the consent of the father is relevant because she's property. So it's strange to me that it specifically says here that he, loved her and his heart was drawn to her and he spoke tenderly to her. Like it's
Well, I'll get to
It's a
that.
strange thing for them to mention in that way. It just,
Um,
yeah.
I'll get to that. But I've had a comment about how from various commentators of how he disgraced her. I don't know, but I don't know if it's
Well, in that
appropriate.
culture, having had premarital sex would be a disgrace, and it would mean that she had no more
No, but
value.
I
Yeah.
meant how. Like, I don't, but I don't know if it's appropriate for this.
Yeah, if you're talking about like the actual like how they would have committed the action uh in like greater detail, no, I think
I will
I don't
say
think
that
so.
I will say that Nachmanides writes that there is no need for how it was done because every intercourse by rape is called inui, torture. Sfono writes that it was commonplace for the heads of the city to take the women of the people without permission and to make them their wives or their mistresses. Bachya ben Asher writes that this act was a punishment for Jacob for 3 reasons. One, he said to Laban in 30:33, "My honesty will testify for me in the future." Two, he denied Esau a glimpse of Dinah, for maybe she could have a beneficial influence on him if he married her. And three, he was arrogant in assuming authority on earth, as indicated by the name he gave to the altar, as we've seen in the previous episode.
Why am I not surprised that some commentaries see this as this is a really Jacob's problem.
Oh,
Yeah.
of course.
Uh,
Because we're just props in
Yeah.
men's narratives. We're not even side characters. We're just eh, prop A comes in, we do the thing with prop A, it goes away, no one ever looks at it again.
Literal property.
About his horn was drawn to Dinah, as the NIV says. The Hebrew Bible, it reads, and his soul was attached to Dinah. David Kimchi comments that this was so because of her beauty and that she was also the daughter of an outstanding personality.
This was an actual city that he was presumably the equivalent to the crown prince of. And this is one tribe of herders, granted with a lot of sons.
Yeah,
But
I think they are very wealthy as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I would assume so.
Now, he spoke tenderly to her. In the Bible, he spoke to the heart of the maiden in the Hebrew Bible. According to Bereshit Rabbah 80 verse 7, he said to her, "See how much money your father expended for a single field. How much more will I, who can give you ever so many fields for planting and sowing?"
Look how much I can offer you.
Sounds
Okay.
like an innuendo as well.
Oh, yeah. Fields in Mesopotamian mythology and language and love poetry, fields as a metaphor and plowing of fields and pouring of cream. And yeah, there's a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Now, the verse 5, he did nothing but about it until they came home. Sfono writes, he refrained from starting a quarrel until his sons would have been informed of what happened so that they could be on their guard against their adversaries. So the
Well,
reason that he kept silent is just to inform of his sons and to
his
prepare.
sons were the muscle.
Yeah,
I mean,
sons were the
I
muscle.
don't know how old he is supposed to be at this point, but Jacob is not single-handedly taking on the king of Shechem.
No. Verse 7, a thing that should not be done. So Rashi comments that even the heathens have trained themselves against unchastity as a consequence of the flood. Nachmanides, however, writes that the Canaanites were immersed in unchastity with women, beasts, and males, as is written in Leviticus 18:27. So instead, this part refers to the word in Israel, meaning that in Israel, this act should not be done. However, in the Canaanites, it was an ordinary thing.
A lot of accusations of goat fuckers flying around. I'm just saying.
No, there weren't really.
Shall we continue to verse 8?
We were verse 11, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yes,
Verse
we were.
11.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. So here we go again, boys and girls. And and puppies and kittens. And okay, wait, I can do this. No, I still can't do it.
I
It's
thought
okay.
that Aaron told you.
Hey, Shechem.
You
This
can
is
say Shechem.
Shechem. Anyways, and Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren, let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me, I will give. Ask me never so much dowry and gift, and I will give according as ye shall say unto me, but give me the damsel to wife. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully, and said, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. But in this we will consent unto you, if ye will be as we be, the every male of you be circumcised, then we will give our daughters unto you, and we will take your daughter to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if ye will not hearken unto us to be circumcised, then we will take our daughter, and we will be gone. And the words pleased Hamor, and Shechem, Hamor's son. And the young man deferred not to do the thing, because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. Wow! So this guy that raped her is more honorable than everybody else. And
Yeah, I mean he's
Apparently
the
he-
king of. I mean
Mhm.
he is the head of the state.
and
I
he
think.
jumped in to get cutting right away. Apparently, he was
yeah,
very enthusiastic.
an
Ow.
honorable rapist.
Well, no. It says, like, when it says he's honorable, it means that he's the head of the family.
Hmm,
He's the most honored of his family, so he's the patriarch.
fair enough.
So, verse 13, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully. Rashi comments that they have responded cleverly. We've seen this change of deceit and cleverness in the story of the stealing of the blessings. And is also written in Targum Onkelos and Targum Jonathan. However, Nachmanides writes that the deceitfulness lay in their saying that every male of theirs be circumcised, as they thought that the people of the city will not consent to it. Even if perchance they will listen to their prince and they will all become circumcised, they will come 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, as in verse 25, and will take their daughter from the house of Shechem.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Okay,
Spoiler
so
alert.
we have a comment from Soma Valian, $20. Thank you. Says if a dungeon master introduces his first female NPC the way the Bible introduces Dinah, he can't be surprised when Simeon and Levi stop taking the game seriously and start playing their characters like murder hobos.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. This, it's almost like patriarchy and the attitudes that go with it might have some influence on murder hobo impulses.
And this whole fascination with you must be like unto us and you must whittle your dick.
Yeah.
So verse 17.
I suspect, though, that the reason they gave that ultimatum was because they didn't expect them to comply with this demand.
Oh, you didn't hear the spoiler alert. They were being deceitful, even in that verse.
Oh yeah, no, doubly deceitful. Obviously, I mean,
They're sons of Jacob.
yeah.
So verse.
I know that. I think that they gave such an outlandish request because, I mean, who's gonna whack off the end of their dick
even if
some? I mean,
he's so enamored with Dinah that he's going to do it. Getting the whole town to do it is another.
Generally, you whack off the whole dick.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean a different context. I'm sorry.
If you're gonna bob it, go full bob it.
Can I just say, happy birthday, Lilith?
Oh, thank you, Adam. Thank you.
Cheers. So, verse 17. Interesting that the NIV writes "our sister." I don't know about other translations, but in the Hebrew Bible, it's "our daughter."
I did notice that. It's perhaps because it says that her brothers were the ones who spoke.
Yeah.
But you know, you would expect this to come through the father as the patriarch of the family. I don't know.
Yeah. Ibn Ezra
Um,
writes that since you wanted to say something.
I'm reading the NRSV. It also says our daughter. It doesn't say sister.
Okay.
There's a note for both.
So in the Hebrew, in Hebrew, it's our daughter. Ibn Ezra writes that since she was a minor, they spoke on behalf of Jacob.
Oh yeah, it doesn't say how old she was.
Bachya ben
It's
Bachya ben
Probably
Asher,
13 or 14.
Bachya ben Asher writes that she was 8 years old.
That's horrifying.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope that's
So
wrong.
So how old was she when her father put her in a box
Oh God.
to
I
hide her
remember.
from Asav?
Yeah,
That-
yeah.
Well,
that
I
is-
guess it wasn't
that
that
is
long before.
horrifying. I was already intensely disturbed with the concept that she was probably just after her bat mitzvah at the age of 13 or 14. That's even worse. That's
Right,
much
yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
So it okay. So you said that in the Hebrew it says daughter.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So this is his translation of the Hebrew Bible, and in verse 14, right? So yeah, the translation is so Shechem and Hamor his father deceitfully, and they spoke as they did because he had defiled Dinah, their sister, and they said to them, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who has a foreskin."
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, a little late.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Maybe
defiling
if
too.
they would have circumcised him in the beginning, he wouldn't have had the motivation to do what he did to Dinah.
But-
Certainly not for several days. I don't know how long after an adult circumcision.
Several weeks. This
The
is
defiling
before the
too.
age of morphine and antibiotics.
Fair. I'm not sure how long after an adult circumcision you're ready to get back in the game, but it's going to be a little while, I imagine.
Yeah, and
I
remember
hope
also
I'll never
that
have to
we're
find out. Jeez.
we're using at this point, I think, Bronze Age technology at best. So it's
good.
pretty easy to come away with the short end of the stick.
So at this point, we're just hoping they have a bronze knife and not just a sharp rock.
Yeah, at some
And
point. Yeah.
with defiling, there's like nuance here that Dinah didn't have as much value as a marriage prospect, both
Of
for her
course.
family and herself, if she wasn't a virgin.
Well, yeah, technically, you could say that she would have no value at all as a marriage prospect if she's not a virgin, which is the sick thing about these
And
cultures.
is this another biblical contradiction? Because I mean, elsewhere it says that if you have sex with a woman, and consent again is never an issue, but if you have sex with a woman, you it's basically the rule is that you break it, you buy it.
Yeah, but you
Right.
pay
Yeah,
half the
that's in
bride price.
Deuteronomy 22.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. Married women or women who are engaged and promised to another man could be said to have an issue of consent.
Well,
they're the
Also, to be
ones.
clear here, this is in Genesis. That law of Moses and Deuteronomy didn't come until the 10 Commandments, the 613 Commandments on Mount Sinai.
Yeah, but we all know this was written after.
Yeah, I'd say chronologically, if these
Well,
characters
how can you
actually
say
existed.
that one fictional event occurred after another fictional event?
Well,
And
in the chronology of the fiction,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
like
also,
Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone
if
happened before
Moses
Harry
is-
Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
And
Yeah,
also, if Moses isn't real at all,
Then yeah.
Yep.
then
well, we know the origin of some of the law. Deuteronomy was the priest who raised the child King Josiah, but that's an entirely different story, and we will get there.
Yeah, and since we're
Okay.
doing all this
In like a
discussion,
year.
since we're doing all this discussion of the necessity of whittling weenies, let's remember what the purpose of that is. Okay, so in order to show your devotion to your obsession to blind belief, to show your conviction in something for which there's absolutely no evidence. You have to assault the most sensitive part of your body, and this, as an adult especially, and you have to have somebody, you have to volunteer to have this done, and so this is going to give you some kind of cultural rights, because showing your conviction to this belief system is apparently all that matters to the priests and everything.
Technically, it would be showing conviction by cutting your child's weenie, because this was done when they were young, whenever possible. And yeah, it's
8 days old.
gee, I wonder how Christianity turned into such a sexual repression cult. I just can't see the connection.
So do I, Lilith. So do I.
Lilith, you mentioned like the consent of the woman in the case where she's married or engaged. That consent is only about whether she should also be punished.
Exactly.
Right.
It has nothing to do with any kind of respect for her as a person. It's just, are we going to kill her too, or just, shame and abandon her?
And it's like, oh, if she got raped in the city and no one heard her scream, she consented.
Right. Doesn't matter if she was gagged or they had a knife to her throat. No. But she's given the benefit of the doubt if it happens in a field.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I have an addiction to something that's about music, because I'm addicted to something called the Eurovision Song Contest. I don't know whether anybody's heard of that.
Just a little.
Would you guys mind if I took it from verse 20?
20? No, I want to do verse 20. I want to finish the story.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's go. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came unto the gate of their city and communed with the men of their city, saying, These men are peaceable with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land and trade therein for the land. Behold, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us for wives, and let us give them our daughters. And only herein will the men consent unto us, for to dwell with us, to be one people. If every male among us be circumcised, and they are circumcised. And everybody that's listening right now at the gates is like, what? You want us to do what? And shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. So they're like, yeah, you have to cut off a very intimate part of your body, but you're going to get their cattle, and everything they have will eventually belong to us. And unto Hamor and unto Shechem, his son hearkened all that went out of the gate of his city. And every male was circumcised, and all that went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were sore, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brethren, took each man his sword, and came upon the city boldly, and slew all the males. And they slew Hamor and Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain, and spoiled the city, because they had defiled their sister. They took their sheep, their oxen, and their asses, and that which was in the city, and that which was in the field, and all their wealth, and all their little ones, and their wives took they captive, and spoiled even all that was in the house. And Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, Ye have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites. And I, being few in number, they shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. And they said, Should he deal with our sister as with a harlot? Dad, you see what he did to Dinah? I mean, I think it was also like he's like, why did you do this, sons? We're few in number here. They're gonna overwhelm us. And they're like, but should we let them do that? Because it was a assault on their honor too, that they allowed their kinswoman to be assaulted that way.
No thought that genocide might be an inappropriate reaction to this. Like, if they just wanted to kill the offender, that would be one thing. They genocided an entire town. And when you said that they were, the men of the city were talking, I really wanted to interrupt and say, and thus the men of Shechem learned what the indigenous people of North America learned. Never give the believers in the God of Abraham the benefit of the doubt.
So, um, about what happened there. Why did Simeon and Levi kill all the males of the city? Not just because of Dinah. Maimonides writes in Mishnah Torah, Kings and Wars, chapter 9, that their act was justified because they have transgressed against against one of the 7 Noahide laws. The Noahide laws are not to worship idols, not to curse God, not to commit murder, not to commit adultery, not to steal, not to eat flesh torn from a living animal, and they also required to establish courts of justice. He writes, how must the Noachites fulfill the commandment to establish laws and courts? They are obliged to set up judges and magistrates in every major city to render judgment concerning these 6 mitzvot and to admonish the people regarding their observance. A Noachite who transgresses these 7 commands shall be executed by decapitation. For this reason, all the inhabitants of Shechem were obligated to die. Shechem kidnapped. They observed and were aware of his deeds, but did not judge him.
Yeah, got a question here from C. Geezer says, asks me, do Mormons habitually circumcise male infants? Yes.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, which infuriates me because I can't get religious believers to understand. They'll be all about protecting the children, right?
No, they're about protect the fetus. Once you're born, you're on your own.
Yeah. Won't somebody think of the children? Well, apparently not. And so consent again becomes another issue. Well, let's do gender, or let's do genital mutilation on these boys. No anesthetic, and what's the procedure for this? So an old man gets out a scalpel and cuts a piece off, and then sucks the blood off.
That's the traditional Jewish ritual. I don't understand
Yeah, that's what
is so difficult, particularly apparently for the religious, to just not touch children's genitals.
How about if we're going to make consent an issue at all, and I realize that Abrahamic faith has a problem with this. If we're going to make consent an issue at all, then how about let's not do body modifications to somebody who can't consent to that?
There was an infant that contracted herpes from some of the Orthodox Jewish community here in
There were
America.
several. I'm going to have to refresh, so if I vanish, I apologize.
I also haven't finished my commentary.
Okay.
All
right, go ahead.
Yeah, Nachmanides, however, disagreed with Maimonides because if it was the case, then wasn't Jacob the first to obtain the merit of causing their deaths? But he was rather angry at his sons and cursing them later if they did indeed fulfill a commandment. Instead, he writes that the transgression of the commandment of establishing a court of justice does not justify the death penalty, as it is a positive precept, and failing to fulfill a positive precept does not incur the death penalty. He further writes that it was not the responsibility of Jacob and his sons to bring them to justice, but they killed them because they wanted to take revenge on them. So Nachmanides disputes this reasoning of why they should have killed them. So you see, this is also debated between Jewish scholars whether they should have or shouldn't have killed all the people.
Mm-hmm. It seems treacherous, no matter how you frame it. Like he's like, hey, okay, we'll give you all our daughters, and the other people think, hey, yeah, we'll get all their property too through their daughters, and then like surprise, and while they're all suffering from having circumcised themselves even as adults, they came and slew all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems kind of treacherous no matter how you, but I mean it's on brand for Jacob and his clan. But
Ivory Darkness comments, Joseph Smith, Genesis 34 used and it came to pass. I'm sure I can use it a gazillion times and nobody will question the validity of my bullshit. I mean, Book of Mormon.
On this issue of like the way that they're trying to bring justice to this place, right? So like there's this one offender, but then the whole suffers for it, right? This is kind of in line with Israelite theology in general. So I recently did a video on the suffering servant, and
I saw that, by the way.
well, hopefully you enjoyed it. I came to a different
I
conclusion
did.
than most people, but either way. So yeah, I'm just gonna pull up a quote here from it because this was actually super important to how they understood the relationship between the individual and the community. Uh, so much of the Bible seems to favor the interpretation that you can pay for the sins of others, but it's not in an individual sense. No single individual atones for the sins of the people until Jesus. But the people are said to suffer because of the sins of the people. Even if you were pious, if enough people were not, the community would end up paying for it. This in no way suggests that others outside of a single pious follower are not suffering. The whole group is suffering because of the sins of individuals in the group. The so this brings into view the idea of a corporate personality. This means that one person can represent the whole, and all the people can be seen as one. So that is kind of a theme that is persistent throughout the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah, we also have to throw this in too. If this is not the sins of the people. In this case, genocide is an appropriate response for the sins of basically one person.
No, I know exactly.
Yeah.
That's what the corporate personality is.
Well, and
So they represent each other.
the concept of I've brought this up before, where a hierarchical authority means that the actions of the one at the top will affect everyone below, and sometimes completely dictate everything below. And this is a very primitive and authoritarian power structure. There is some truth to the fact that the community suffers for the deeds of the whole. The people who've refused to vaccinate their children are the reason why measles and mumps are breaking out and sickening and killing children. It's not just individual acts. We all affect the collective because we're a social species and we all live here. But that's not what people have a problem with. People have a problem with the idea that it's okay to punish people for things they didn't do.
Well, what's interesting to me is that human beings came together and decided that collective punishment was a war crime in the Geneva Convention, and I just find that incredibly ironic, given that it's God's modus operandi in the Bible.
It
He even
really
says
is.
when he hands down the Ten Commandments and he tells them not to worship any other gods, he says to them, "You shall not bow down or worship other gods, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of parents to the third and the fourth generation of those who reject me."
But showing love unto 1,000 generations of they who love me and are called by my name. I remember.
Yeah.
It's and yet
Wait a minute. How can you celebrate to 1,000 generations those who love me? Because that implies that if you're going 1,000 generations from the one who loved you, that let's just assume that the very next one was one who did not love you. Are you counting for 1,000 generations? No. It becomes to 3 and 4 generations after that one. So yeah, that's
Right.
another contradiction.
No, of course. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it never does.
I have to wonder the way that we read the Bible. I've heard believers tell me that you have to read the Bible in the Spirit. And what that apparently means, somebody described it to me once upon a time as saying eating the word.
Yes.
Where you have you heard that phrase?
Oh yes.
Okay, so where you just force yourself to believe whatever absurdity it is.
Well, this is again where commentaries, not intellectual scholarly commentaries like you bring, Lawrence and Tomer and everybody, but devotional commentaries, as in the Daily Bread. You can go to any evangelical church and you will get a little pamphlet called The Daily Bread, and it will have devotionals for the whole week based on whatever text going through the Bible. My utmost for his highest is the same thing. The idea is there's a concept of the Bible as the living word of God. So God is going to speak to you through the word, but also by drawing connections between various stories, you can create a broader narrative, and people will create a broader narrative for you that is in line with your theology. And if everything you're hearing is in line with what you already believe, and you can find something edifying in that. And like that's a pretty normal spiritual practice, to take a sacred tale or a sacred book and find something meaningful for yourself in that narrative. But then, because particularly Protestants worship the Bible rather than God, they often worship their own interpretation of the Bible, and thus they endlessly war and schism and kill each other over whatever they thought God meant that day in the Bible, basically. And so it just becomes this self-perpetuating machine of trying to pretend that it's all coherent and it all says what you already think, because if it doesn't, then you've denied God and your faith is meaningless.
In America, at least, I'm always surprised when I see someone who is preaching Christian values like Trump, and then says stuff like what was it? Corinthians
13?
No, he messed something up. He always messes the Bible up when he says it.
He says like 2 Corinthians or something.
2 Corinthians.
Oh, 2 Corinthians, yeah.
Yeah. And because there's 2 kinds, 2 or 3 kinds, but the 2 I'm talking about of Christians in the United States. There's evangelicals, and they have a higher percentage of them that actually go to church and actually read the Bible. Mm-hmm. And then there's people who say they're Christians, and maybe some evangelicals are maybe dozing off in church or something, and they haven't actually read their Bible. There's like a troll in the comments that is like saying, don't read our Bible, you know, and I'm like, why not? Aren't you proud of the genocide? You know,
don't
people
you
can be
support
Christian.
the Gideons putting it in every hotel room? Are you doing that so we won't read it?
So I just want to point out, so on that, if you know that psalm that's always quoted at us about, like, you know, the fool has said in his heart there is no God, Psalm 14. Then there's another one that's actually exactly the same, but whatever. So that if people actually bothered to read the Psalter and read what the psalmists mean when they say fool, they would realize that they're not talking about atheists. They're talking about people who profess to believe that actually don't. They don't take it to heart. They don't take it seriously. They just go through the motions. If you actually bother reading the Psalter, then you would realize what the authors were saying when they kept saying fools or wicked ones.
Right.
There is a point where they're identified together. So I go, you know, when we get to Psalms, I'll go over that more. But
yeah, I think you got a video in that too, by the way.
I mean, I probably do, but the thing is, it's based on, like, just, I mean, I guess I could probably like expand it to like more than a couple minutes, because like it doesn't really take that long. But yeah, essentially, whenever that's quoted at you, just realize that if they were to actually take it in its context, then they would not come out with the idea of it being about atheists.
But
none of them, even like the ones that don't actually read the Bible and nominally go to church, they all think they understand the Word of God better than anybody else, but they haven't actually read it.
They're because the ones who do read it are reading it within these Bible studies and commentaries that give a specific narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And for them, reading the Bible, you know, go read your Bible means go read it and understand it the way I understand it. But many of them, I genuinely don't think are really conscious of why they understand it the way they do.
I'm amazed that people can read the Bible and come away thinking that it's in any sense divine. Because I've got this chapter is a beautiful example, but every chapter we've read so far is an adequate example.
I read these things too, and I still had my faith in God into my 30s. I thought of them as barbaric acts of primitive people, and maybe God was having difficulty speaking through them. But that's what I thought. I did recognize that it was immoral when I read it.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people don't recognize that it's immoral.
Yeah.
Well, I
That's why,
mean,
that's why I
the,
value
the other
excuse me.
thing,
While
the
I
other thing,
appreciate having the expertise, the familiarity that some of you bring to this, you know, it's really just the simplest thing. The simplest understanding is necessary. Just read the thing not in the spirit.
Yeah.
So this guy's having sex with an 8-year-old. They're treating women as property. They're commanding that you can't marry this woman you love because you have to chop the tip of your dick off because we're religious freaks that don't make sense out of anything. And if you don't do exactly everything the way we like, we will come and kill everyone in your family.
And also if you do.
And
apparently.
take all of your
Yeah.
things.
Yes.
That was the important thing, because notice this: it isn't just the barbarism of killing people and all of that. It is also they enrich themselves this way. And
Oh,
and
yeah.
look at the 2 or 3 times the patriarchs here, Jacob and his forefathers, have gotten rich. They've had a beautiful woman to entice somebody, and then they got a lot of property out of it.
And let's look at even more basic than that. If I am going to treat the Bible as God's word, you know, God created the entire universe and he's going to impart his word to us. This story has fuck all relevance to do with anything. This doesn't tell us anything about, you know, how to live in this world. I mean, there's a lot of believers, a lot of creationists who would say that the Bible is like a manual for how to live
Yeah.
on the planet before moving on to the next life or whatever,
Mm.
except that it's not. It doesn't give any of these ancient people any useful information. They don't know anything about why they're supposed to wash their hands. It doesn't understand about, you know, why you're supposed to cook your food, why you're not allowed to eat roadkill. There's reasons for this, and it would be helpful if you
Good reasons.
those reasons. Instead, we have to hear stories like this that have no fucking relevance to anything ever.
You asked the question, how do they read this and not recognize that? Somebody, I'm not sure if I'm mistaking them, in the comments is saying my feelings isn't morality. I'm like, how are you framing the genocide and all of this as moral? I think a lot of Christians, they think God commanded it. These were the representatives of God, therefore it is moral. If God
well,
said so.
that's just what they mean by morality. They just define morality in a tautological way to say that morality is that which conforms with the edict or character or nature of God, which makes it a completely meaningless tautology to say something like God is good, because all you're really telling us is that God is himself, but that doesn't inform us as to how he's going to behave or what he might expect of us.
The
But
These
deliberate
are the people who say that
misrepresentation
they
of
have
what
an
morality
objective
is.
reality where we do not, right? The unbelievers don't have an objective
Well,
reality, but the Bible believers do. The objective morality is not just the subjective opinion of whoever's pretending to speak for God's subjective opinion. It's actually the subjective interpretation of the person reading the book. So their morality is entirely
They
subjective.
don't know what objective means. They
oh yeah,
don't know what
they seem to
subjective
think
means. They think subjective means arbitrary, which is not the same thing. And they don't know what objective means. They think that something has to be absolute. They conceive of God as this absolute through all space and time, foundation, ground of all being, etc. Although that's still an Hindu concept. And that if you don't ground morality in something with that level of breadth, then it's just totally arbitrary and makes up whatever you feel. The amount of, like, the thing is, Aaron, you do good work and you make excellent points, but I think sometimes you are not necessarily aware of the amount of groundwork done to twist concepts into their opposite, to foundationally dig out anything that could ground them in any kind of reality, to prep a person so that these arguments make sense. And when
Yeah.
I get my life in order, one of the videos I absolutely have to make is one about Christian morality and about how they get to this insanely fucked up world where their idea of objective morality is something grounded in the internal conceptually, but is in fact totally arbitrary. And things grounded in actual reality, like the concept of harm that can be measured and studied in reality that we engage with, is somehow subjective and arbitrary and just your feelings.
Well, I think that the most effective deconstruction of Christian morality I've ever seen, and I'm pretty sure Aaron has referenced this video before, but Scott Clifton made a video called Treatise on Morality.
I was
And
100% going to mention that. Yes.
yeah,
Excellent
he
video.
walks through Christian morality in a way that I'd never seen anybody do before. And I watched this video when he first published it 12 years ago. And it definitely resonated with me, I'll tell you that much.
I cited
I
that
did
video yesterday.
I did want
That's
to.
one of the most important videos I've ever seen in my life. I cite it almost constantly.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
still send people to, I think it's the 40-minute mark where he gives the definition of morality, you know, the one that actually makes sense.
Yep.
Yep. Particular action or behavior is morally right.
Okay, let me jump into that. That's Benny Olson offers 20 Danish kroner. Thank you very much for that.
Oh,
He says, "Thank you all so much. Have fun." Thank you very much, Benny Olson.
thank you, Benny.
And then Sean Alexander offers $20 instead. Stephen Fry, in a debate with Catholic leaders, said, "For me to be called a pervert by these extraordinarily sexually dysfunctional people, I don't think human history has ever has ever had more."
I've watched that debate so many times. IQ squared. It was Christopher Hitchens and Stephen Fry against representatives of the Catholic Church on the question, is the Catholic Church a force for good in the world? And it is beautiful. It is beautifully done. It is beautifully executed. And it's just, just.
I have a debate coming up where I'm supposed to argue the same thing but replace Catholicism with Islam.
Oh, God.
I wanted to talk on that for a second because I am also a former Catholic, and a lot of even evangelicals will dismiss us atheists that are former believers as simply church hurt. That we got hurt by something in the church, and the church isn't really like that. So, is the Catholic Church a force for good in the world? My mother, when my father divorced her, she was a refugee, and in America and alone, and the Catholic Church took her in. And with my sister, because me and my brother, we went with our father because of the court, and yes, the Catholic Church does do good. So I can't say that it doesn't, but there's awful bad. I mean, like somebody said, like don't throw out the baby with the wet water. Is there a baby in there? You know,
There's
in
lots
religion.
the sad thing is there's lots of babies. They're all dead at the bottom.
Yeah.
They're all in the sewer of the orphanage in Ireland.
Yeah.
Or in Canada.
In Canada, in our grounds, in unholy ground around the residential schools.
And with Catholicism, all of us know original sin. We all have Catholic guilt, and because we're unworthy, and just for being born for the sin of Eve and Adam, and you're never worthy, and you always have to prostrate yourself before God because you're unworthy of God. You're filthy rags, you know, and it's not on balance for all the good they do. It's not worth like indoctrinating children that they are sinful.
It's nothing to the evil they do.
Yes.
I'd like to add a little something here because we were talking a minute ago about how the mental gymnastics that Christians often have to play to rationalize what would otherwise seem as completely counterintuitive moral precepts, if not outright just foul. But there is a significant portion of Christians that they don't have to rationalize this at all because these sorts of moral precepts are appealing to them. And my father is one of those people. I remember I was sitting in the living room and he and I are just watching TV, and out of nowhere he talks to me about the defenestration of Jezebel when she got tossed out of the window and Jehu ran over her with a chariot and she got eaten by dogs.
Yeah.
He was laughing about that like it was a comedy. And he pulls out his Bible, his 70-year-old Bible that was passed down from his grandfather and father, and reads the story aloud, and he's cackling like a maniac while reading it. And I just thought to myself, oh, I'm so happy that I don't agree with this man. You know,
do you understand why women don't feel safe around Christian men?
I'm acutely aware of that, but I mean, my father might be a special case.
He's not. He's not.
My
There are
sister,
many good Christian men, but there are also many like him.
my sister has my sister is a homosexual. She's a lesbian, and she has a girlfriend, and she's in a very like good relationship with her, and I'm happy for my sister. You know, she's happy for one of the very first times in her life. She's gone through a lot of shit. My childhood was not a childhood. I'll just put it that way briefly. But I remember when she and I were younger, 15, 16 years old, we would be in my room talking, hanging out, doing whatever. And we would hear my father in the living room on the phone with my grandfather talking about fantasizing about being able to just like line up homosexuals like the Gestapo and execute them one by one. And these people, they're not that uncommon, you know. So I would make sure to emphasize that um, any sufficiently advanced stupidity is indistinguishable from malice, and at some
Yeah.
point it crosses that line.
And
So
to support what you're saying, Xerxes, the number of times me and Arn have been told by Christians with glee that we're going to burn in hell. And some people
Yes,
have
I have
admitted they
that.
want to see us burn in hell. Like,
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of being in heaven is that you get to look over the balcony and smile and laugh at your loved ones being tortured in hell.
Was it Maimonides or Augustine that let that one slip?
I'm sorry if I'm being rude, but I see the super chats piling up. and-
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
you're
seeing
right.
that too, Tomer. Thank you. So, Constellation Pegasus offers $9.99. Says all of you need to become a Jehovah's Witness and be part of the Jehovah's only organization on Earth. After all, Armageddon since 1914 is right around the corner.
You
And
gotta
then
love when they hit the
I'm going to run
centennial
through
of
these as
that.
quickly as I can because, like Tomer, I've been seeing them stack up. But how do you jump into the conversation for this sort of thing? I don't mean to interrupt. Pumpkin J says, while I was a true Christian, and I like how "true" had the trademark next to it, I thought that I knew what the Bible meant. I read it through the lens of what the most extreme preachers said about it. And that's hard for me to understand because I hear that kind of argument, but then we read it together. I'm like, this is insidious. This is stupid. This is illogical, irrational. That it's inhumane. What
So
part of what part of the good book is good?
so I mean there are parts that are good, arguably. Mostly once you get to the Jesus stuff, there are some good parts in there, but I think overall, what we have to do to understand a book like this goes for both Christians and atheists, is to understand it in its historical context. And that's why the scholarship on this stuff is so important. So we don't need to put ourselves in the minds of believers today. What we should be doing is putting ourselves in the mind of the believers who who would have written these texts. They're
You're literally using moral relativism as a defense of the Bible.
Well,
I'm not trying to defend anything. What I'm saying
Well, I mean,
is
in order to justify these,
I'm not saying it.
we
I'm
have
not
to
saying we
invoke
justify
moral
it.
relativism, which believers constantly criticize moral relativism as a failing of the unbiblical.
Right. I'm not personally. I'm not trying to justify these things. What I am trying to do is set up a framework through which we can understand what these texts meant to them back then. So
well, I mean, Lawrence, we're talking about people who didn't know where the sun went at night. None of us in the year 2021 have any expectations about these people being moral savants. We
no,
we fully expect them to be barbarous, antiquated sheep fuckers. We're not
and
we're not
I
criticizing
get
them
that.
in like we're not criticizing them through the modern lens. We're not criticizing them at all. We're criticizing people in the modern world, in today's world, with the understanding of moral virtue and compassion for other human beings, believing that these sorts of stories were inspired by the arbiter of morality for the entire universe. That is what is horrifying to us, and that's what we're criticizing, not the stories themselves. The stories themselves, in any other context, like nobody sits there and reads the Code of Hammurabi and goes, "Oh wow, some of this shit's really fucked up." because we don't care. This is from people thousands and thousands of years ago that has no effect on us. But the problem is that there are billions of people in the world today, alive today, who think and believe and act and operate as though these stories provide some amount of moral virtue that we should be following in today's world. But I mean, if we were to actually look at this honestly,
I don't think that they are supposed to provide us today moral virtue. Or
No one
I
thinks
know
you
you
do.
don't, but these
It's
Christians
that's
do.
what
These
we're
Christians do.
upset. That's
These
what we're
people that
upset about
actually
and
believe
objecting
this.
to.
The
Right,
2 billion
I
people in the world who believe in this book do. And they believe and think and act this way in public, and they run for office on these platforms, and they control world governments.
This book also
I
tells
understand where
you
I'm at.
that if
I get
that
that.
that believe it and don't question it, this is the word of God. So like if that this is the way they saw it, sure. But then the people who are reading it, the book tells them that believe this or go to hell. You
Yeah, I
know?
understand what Xerxes and Lawrence are both saying, and I agree completely with both of you. You are not arguing against each
Yeah,
other.
I
You're just
feel like we're
making
just
slightly
talking
different
past
points.
each other.
I don't, and I maybe I'm misinterpreting what you're saying, but I think that yeah, there is value in understanding like antiquated texts in their proper context, but
And
it
that's
is
what we're
not
doing
us who are liberating it from that context and attempting to apply it to the modern world. And even the people who do this do it hypocritically. They do it with the precepts that they personally arbitrarily prefer and select, not the ones that actually have any kind of real authentic value, like the archetypes that we see in the Old Testament, such as the story of David and Goliath, for instance, overcoming insurmountable adversity just through belief and faith. These are valuable archetypes, valuable stories that are reflected in a lot of different cultures, and these are things that we can derive some amount of moral character from, but they are few and far between. The overwhelming majority of the Old Testament, particularly, is full of savage depravity that nobody should take seriously, and certainly should not be considered, age appropriate for children, whom are
Oh no.
exposed to this at extraordinarily young ages, and it completely fries their brain on how to view the world through a moral lens, and then it builds into this overarching.
Bingo!
Yeah, I do.
Me too.
I do completely understand that, and I again, as Arn said, yeah, we're not disagreeing here. So, but the reason why I decided to mention that was because since we're doing a show about the Bible, I mean the way I do it on my show generally is like we do talk about things that how modern Christianity has taken these things. I am more interested in the composition of these works, and I feel like for a Bible show, if we're trying to do some study about the book itself, then for me it is more useful, because I'm not saying that the talking about the way that Christians have taken this stuff isn't useful. But from my point of view, in order to even get close to being on the same page, we first need to understand where this book comes from, which is why I am so concentrated on the historical setting of the authors.
I know
It
for
helps
me,
me knowing the history of where it came from and understanding the context and the background of it. But why not both? Why a dichotomy?
for my
it-
deconstruction,
yeah.
learning historical context certainly helped. I think opposing these really immoral versions of Christianity will only be helped by having greater literacy about the scholarship, and about the actual context of these stories. That I know that did a huge benefit for me. It's done benefits for people. I know we've mentioned Christian men. My father is a Christian man and a very good one, and he no longer believes in hell. So, like, there are people who want to move away from harmful ideas and who can do that, and hopefully discussing that information will be helpful.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I'm being rude, but are we going to do chapter 35 today? Because I'm seeing the super
Oh,
chats
we
piling
still
up.
have more super
Yeah,
chats.
well, let me
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
run through these comments really quick. Okay, so Matt White says, I was 8, sent to Anglican Sunday school. They preached from the Good News Bible. It's like drinking
Oh,
diluted root beer.
yep. Diluted flat root beer. Yeah.
And then Constellation Pegasus offers $4.99. Says, I'm joking, everyone. Laugh. Relax. Laugh.
King Zurich says, I'm hearing some background noise from you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Then
Sorry, I don't know
Eli
what that was.
Hutch for $5, thank you, says, thank you guys for teaching me so much about my indoctrination growing up. Is there any validity to Jesus's tomb? No spoilers here. You're going to have to wait till we get there in about 2 years.
Yeah.
I wanted to make
2
one more
years?
comment on
Okay,
this
Ard.
because of the super
Obviously.
chat. You see, they're like thanking us for helping them make sense of their indoctrination growing up. My children had pressure from other parts of the family to be Christians, and what finally deconverted them wasn't creationism or how it doesn't make scientific sense. It was how immoral the Bible is. I told them, read the Bible then. As you know, I was an atheist then, and unfortunately, I'm the one who started them with Christianity. But read it, and that. So let's, if we're gonna read it, let's read it. You know?
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's read it.
and that's what I'm really getting value out of this show. And I very much appreciate the team that is involved in this. I'm going to get through these other chats. I also want to get to Genesis 35, and I want to do it today. So I'm
Yeah.
going to run through these chats as quick as I can. The Caribbean Skeptic Secularist addresses this comment to Lalandra and gonna go for it. Says, does the Bible give moral pronouncements? How do Christians evaluate those?
Okay,
How do
that's a
Christians
different one to
evaluate
These are
what's
those
on.
very
on moral instruction?
these are very big questions to ask. Like
I'm seeing a different one up on the screen about the book of the passage of Samuel where God made a baby suffer.
No,
you just scroll up.
it's
You
above.
just scroll up.
You
It's
scroll
like
up,
2
yeah.
comments above it.
It's like
Yeah,
heavy
that
question.
may be too big a question to deal with right now.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
so I'm going to move to the next comment. Salion
It gives some moral pronouncements. So let's say
yeah.
that.
It gives some pronouncements that are declared to be moral by the book.
Yeah.
And Cilian D says, serious question. Christians make references to the church fathers. How did they forget about Arius, that believed like most Christians that Jesus was adopted, and about Origen that, and then I guess it's supposed to jump to something else.
No, maybe.
Yeah.
cut
So
off.
they don't forget about these people. But in the history of the ecumenical councils, they believe that these ideologies have been basically dealt with. You could say that there are modern day Arians. You could say that there are modern day Marcionites. You could because the Christologies are so close. But the thing is, the history of the ecumenical councils is littered with debates about these subjects. About these subjects. In fact, I have a series on them on the ecumenical councils. So they don't forget about these people that disagreed. They just think that it's a settled issue essentially.
Well, scholars don't, but the average Christian is not aware of them. And there's been a lot of questions, a lot of things that people theologically take for granted without being aware of how diverse the opinions have been in the history of Christianity, and also very often without an awareness of how they even came to hold specific views. It's presented to them as self-evident within the text, and a lot of people go, okay.
All right, jumping to another comment. The Caribbean Skeptic Secularist says, last night I was co-hosting with the Afro-Atheist, YouTube. We read a book of Samuel passage where God made a baby suffer and then murdered the baby for the sin of the father.
Well,
Thoughts
again, we
on
need
that?
to go.
Yeah,
We
it's
need
the
to
son
go
of
to.
David and Bathsheba.
Yep.
Yeah, we will. I think we'll get to that when we read Samuel.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of interesting stuff in Samuel. So yeah, we'll get to that.
And then the
It's-
last
You think
comment,
that-
and
you think that's
this
bad?
will catch us up, and then we jump back into the reading. Master Filbo said, on the subject of harm that Lilith brought up, the first tenet of Wicca is do no harm. I always thought it was subjective. What I consider harmful, someone else could say isn't.
That's BDSM for you.
Not wrong. Not wrong.
Well,
It's
there's
like consent
there's
matters.
certainly discussion about what harm is and stuff, but like if I cut off your arm, that's harmful. There might be an extreme circumstance where that's the best option, like 127 hours or whatever. But honestly,
World War Z.
yeah, you can tell if something is harmful. If the situation is nuanced, there might be discussion about what the least harmful option is. And that's, you could say, subjective in that sense. But the physical realities that we're engaging with are the only reasonable basis for an objective morality, and they are objective. If I punch you, that's a fact.
There is a really like out there reference that what you're talking about cutting off your arm. That makes me think of Arn Ralston. He cut off his arm because it was trapped in a boulder to save his life.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
that movie was, 127 hours. So yeah, there might be any action that, in some extreme circumstance, we could say invent a scenario where it would be the best available option. But like generally speaking, we don't go about cutting people's arms off, and if we do, we go to jail, as we should.
And the weird kind of touch thing to Arn is that when you go to YouTube and you type in Arn, it a lot of times it says Arn Ralston instead, and Arn is ranking like second or third. So maybe one day he'll be more popular in the searches than Arn Ralston.
We're number one.
Yeah,
What do I got to do? Cut off my arm?
Yeah, just that.
Then where would the snake sit?
Okay, so I like Tomiar, I want to see if we can get through this other chapter today.
Okay,
I
let's
also
do it.
want to know. I don't know if there's a guy who thinks I'm smoking weed in chat. I'm not. This is a hookah. You should, maybe get a little bit more educated about that. It's not all the same.
Peyote.
What is the
Yeah.
law of Satanism? Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. So, or I'm thinking of Aleister Crowley or something. But if
Do what you
Lawrence,
will.
Do
Lawrence
what thou
wants-
wilt is the hypothetical imperative from Kant, but it was adopted later by Aleister Crowley.
okay,
And also by Wicca, harming none
Yeah.
else, do as ye wilt.
if Lawrence wants to smoke a hookah, that's his own. Do as he will.
Yeah.
I'm so
I'm just
cigarette.
enjoying myself.
Yeah.
You guys mind if I read 35?
Yeah,
Please do.
that's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think up to the half of the chapter, because the second half is Hebrew words.
Okay.
So up to verse
So
15.
which verse do you want me
Yeah.
to read to?
Up to verse 16.
Verse 16. Okay. God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and settle there. Make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau. So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among you and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, that I may make an altar there to the God who answered me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone. So they gave to Jacob all the foreign gods that they had, and the rings that were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak that was near Shechem. As they journeyed, a terror from God fell upon the cities all around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan. He and all the people who were with him, and there he built an altar and called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God had revealed himself to him when he fled from his brother. And Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried under an oak below Bethel. So it was called Alon Bakuth. God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram, and he blessed him. God said to him, your name is Jacob. No longer shall you be called Jacob, but Israel shall be your name. So he was called Israel. God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall spring from you. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give the land to your offspring after you. Then God went up from him at the place where he had spoken with him.
Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he had spoken with God, a pillar of stone, and he poured out a drink offering on it, and poured oil on it. So Jacob called the place where God had spoken to him Bethel. Then they journeyed from Bethel, and they were still some distance from Ephrath. Rachel was in childbirth, and she had hard labor. When she was in her hard labor, the midwife
I
said
think
to her,
I think you've reached 16.
"Oh,
Yeah.
my bad."
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I just want to mention here we see clear evidence of multiple authors and of the stitching together of multiple origin stories. Here, God appears and says, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob, but Israel." And yet, last week, Jacob wrestled with God. We argued over the crotch shot angle, and
Mhm.
the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and overcome," or as a princess has struggled with God and prevailed, however you want to phrase it.
Well, I'll
Um,
get to that.
Well, yeah, that was not supposed to be God, but here it says that was definitely God.
well, no, this is a different occurrence apparently, where God also says the same thing, and then the man, which may or may not be God or an angel of God, had said that previously. These are, at least from my notes, these appear to be two different
The guy
original
that may or may
authorships.
not be God is also described as the one that multiple witnesses say was God.
Yes, we were discussing whether it was God or an angel of God, and that. But again, this is, you have the same renaming happens twice in two different contexts, not very far apart from each other, for no particular reason. Like, we already renamed him Israel instead of Jacob. Didn't we just cover this? But we're doing
Well,
it
I'll
again.
get to that.
Yeah, so this is another case of a doublet, and if you notice, there wasn't really a good transition from 34 to 35, and 35, or sorry, 34. So there's been a lot of looking into that text. It's a very strange text to put into the center of all this, and that of course has led a lot of people to think like the last verse of 31 was like almost definitely a gloss, probably by the priestly source, as John Van Setters argues. But yeah, I completely agree. Here's just a whole string of etiologies that just pop up in this chapter.
I was trying to show, because like I said, I highlighted the entire Pentateuch by authorship. And whereas the previous chapters have been largely a chunk of one source or another, this has been just, chapter is just multicolored all over the place. You've got a chunk from here, a chunk from there, a chunk from another place. And it's honestly a bit awkward and clunky, even in English.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
important to remember that's not real. That wouldn't really be. We shouldn't take it as gospel or anything.
No, but like, I'm not saying they're the original decisions on what sources are, always 100% true. But this chapter is clearly a mishmash, is what I'm saying. And awkwardly placed from a narrative perspective, because you have this argument between the father and the brothers, and they're all going to have to run away, and then we just sort of skip tracks, and recognition of polytheism here, and they have to hide the other gods so God won't be jealous. But apparently they had other gods, and Jacob knew that and was like, okay, now you have to put them away.
I'll get to that.
Do you mind if I continue?
No, I have commentary for this. Verse 2, the get rid of foreign gods. Rashi, Rashba, and Sforno comment that this refers to the god that they had from the spoil of Shechem. The purify yourselves. Rashi comments that they were purified from idolatry. Ibn Ezra said that he ordered them to wash their bodies and change your clothes. Rashi comments that Jacob orders this so that they won't have in their possessions a vestment that has been employed in idolatrous worship. David Kimchi suggested that it could also refer to the clothes of the people of Shechem, which were part of the loot.
Okay.
Verse 4, the rings in the ears. The rings in their ears. Gelsonides writes that the purpose of the rings was to create idols, in reference to the golden calf, which was created from earrings. David Kimchi writes that the various jewelry had idolatrous images engraved upon them.
Yeah, that's kind of a stretch to say that it's related to the golden calf. We do get plenty of stuff with the golden calf later on. In fact, I did a video about the golden calf as well. But yeah, the jewelry with pagan gods on them essentially. That's just a thing that happens all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Not really related to the calf in any way.
So verse 7, God revealed himself. Ibn Ezra, David Kimchen Chizkuni, write that this refers to the angels, possibly because the revealed is in the plural, niglu, and if Elohim meant God, then revealed will be in the singular, nigla, or yeah, nigla. That's correct. Now Deborah, Rebecca's nurse, Chazal in Bereshit Rabbah 81:5 comment that the death of Deborah hints to the death of Rebecca. Rashi comments that the death of Rebecca is not mentioned, so that people might not curse the mother who gave birth to Esau. Nachmanides writes that it is possible that Rebecca's death lacked honor, for Jacob wasn't there. Esau hated her and would not attend, and Isaac's eyes were dim, so he remained in his house. Therefore, Scripture did not want to mention that she was buried by the Hittites.
Oh, that's an interesting take. I mean, I don't know if there's any source for that story, but it is strange to mention that Rebecca's nurse died, but not Rebecca being mentioned. And I would have expected Isaac to die before Rebecca. I mean, he was already on death's door when we last left him, blind and sitting in his bed and saying, "Bring me food so I can give you my last words." And
I think Isaac
goes
dies
away. It's been
here.
at least 20 years. So
Isaac dies in this verse. Finally, he dies.
finally,
in this chapter. Sorry,
in this chapter.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah. Verse 10, your name will be Israel. So Nachmanides writes that that God says to him that his name is still Jacob, even though the angel changed his name, because the angel was not sent to him to change his name.
So this is a man. This was originally said was supposed to be God. God changed his name, and then some guy said, "No, that wasn't really God. That was just an angel." And besides, I'm this guy, and so I'm
God
going to say
says,
that's not what the angel meant. It's just like all of these other hadiths and rabbis when they say, "Well, when the word of God says this, that's what it really meant is this."
yeah.
the cope is getting harder.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to read a couple more comments, and then we'll jump back into the reading. Ivory Darkness says, "Figured out a creature that I feel fits God, an Efreet. Some features of an orangutan. A reprint more accurate than the Ten Commandments." Then John Wild offers $50. Thank you very much for that. "I surf on BitChute, and you, Aaron, are, I guess, a ward, a protection from the jaw-dropping idiocy and hypocrisy that I see all the time." Thank you for the nicest compliment I'm going to get all day.
So are we going to go around saying the power of Aaron repels you? The power of Aaron repels you.
And then Von Reck for $10, thank you, says, "Good merch possibility. A snow globe that is the earth as described in the Bible by the Bible as the firmament." I like that idea.
Can we have a
Of
really
course,
big mountain in the middle
the
with
Bible
a teeny
describes
tiny
the earth as
Jesus
a
and Satan?
reverse snow globe where the water is all around it instead of inside it. And then the final comment, and then we can get back into reading, is Trevor and Wright says, "Are the Philistines mentioned in the Bible the sea people? Peliset, Thekol, Shakalesh, Denian, Weshesh mentioned in the Egyptian hieroglyphic text? And if not, who were they?"
So the Philistines that they're talking about probably were like descendants from one of those groups. So yeah, the Sea Peoples, there were a whole bunch of them. There were more than just the ones that Trevor enlisted. There were a whole bunch of them. Some of them were very close to piratical groups, and a lot of people think that they were essentially the cause of the Bronze Age collapse. I disagree with that, actually. I think they were more of a symptom of an already collapsing of an already collapsing environment. I don't think they helped, right? But like, I don't think they were necessarily a cause of that.
Pirates don't increase stability, but they're also not produced by stability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So the Philistines that are mentioned in the Bible, with their skills on the sea, definitely may have been just descendants of one of these groups. Yeah.
I mean, also the Philistines in Hebrew is Peleshet, which is very similar to one of the tribes of the sea people mentioned in the. I think it's more or less the same word, Peleshet or
Yeah,
something. Although,
Plishtim, yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that
the
makes
Plishtim,
sense.
the plural, and but also it's got like a Hebrew meaning, which it might have been. That's probably that might be a reason why the Hebrews might have called all of the sea people by that name, because in Hebrew it mean like invader or something like that.
Yeah, palash, to invade.
There's
Yeah.
lots of times like that where there'll be a Hebrew word that's like based on a variation of what the people called themselves, but it has a different meaning in Hebrew, and like that's very typical. So I mean, yeah, with anything this far back in history and this sort of spottily recorded, we can look at the best probabilities. We're never going to be 100% on what happened unless someone invents Aaron's hypothetical time machine where we can just rewind and watch.
Mhm.
And then the mighty Jav says, I thought that Jacob had already named that place Bethel in Genesis 28. Are you noticing a trend of redundancy in the Bible? Like
Well, I think
maybe.
here it. I think it actually adds
He
an
did.
L because the place he calls the place El Bet El. And Rashbam says, I had this comment here, comments that Jacob added the word El, seeing that God had stood by him ever since he dreamt of the ladder.
Even though the word Bethel already contains El. But yeah, you're quite right, the mighty Jav, and thank you for catching that additional redundancy that I did in fact miss, because there's just so many of them in this verse or chapter.
Okay.
You know what I mean.
Can I just say one thing before we start again?
Please
Yes.
do.
I'm not yawning because I'm bored. I'm yawning because I was up late last night. So it's my own fault.
Okay, he just wanted to brag about his wild party life on a Friday night.
Yeah, honestly, I just,
Well, no, we were
Fine.
travelling back from holiday yesterday.
Okay.
Save
Oh,
some
and his
company.
holiday.
Before we leave these verses too, I wanted to comment on how when Jacob and his camp moved through Canaan, the inhabitants were terrified of his God, because
Yeah.
that it's like there's these competing football teams, their God
Yeah.
is winning. That's a really that he must be really powerful. It was like the totem of the people. And it's an imaginary thing, but it's like they made something real.
But
Because
it sounds like they're trying to brag and pretend it's the protection of God. Oh, they were terrified of his God. No, they were terrified of your genocidal, insane sons who just murdered an entire town.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I don't know if everyone knew the modus operandi. They just know that the whole town was wiped out. And it's like, okay, the crazy people are coming through. Nobody look, nobody make eye contact.
It's
We're
like
not.
when the Native Americans were terrified of the god of I think the Spaniards, because they brought diseases with them, and they thought it was a judgment. This is the thing where people associate bad things happening to them with, like, maybe God's judging them, or
Or these
uh,
people have a crazy God who's clearly kind of a dick.
Mm.
Well,
Okay,
shall I
so
continue? Verse 16.
I
yeah.
think
I
Tomer
said
wants
it.
to take this over because of all of the Hebrew names.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
well, we
Verse
could.
16.
Oh, sorry.
No, what did you want to say?
Oh no, I was just saying the names really seem to start at 23, but
It's starting.
you have to cover the deaths of Rachel and Isaac. So yeah.
Okay, verse 16. They set out from Bethel, but when they will, I'm reading for the JPS, by the way. They set out from Bethel, but when they were still some distance short of Ephrat, Rachel was in childbirth, and she had hard labor. When her labor was at its hardest, the midwife said to her, "Have no fear, for it is another boy for you. But as she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named him Ben-Oni, but his father called him Binyamin. Thus Rachel died. She was buried on the road of Ephrath, now Bethlehem. Over her grave, Jacob set up a pillar. It is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel stayed in the land, Reuven went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel found out. Now the sons of Jacob were 12 in number.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Reuben, it's interesting. I've brought up the ascension and the headship not going to the eldest son several times, but this little throwaway line with Reuben and the story of Simeon and Levi and what they did to Shechem and that entire town is later given as a reason for why Judah is named as sort of the head of the household going forward. And that is coming in a little while, but it's does anyone remember whose handmaid Bilhah was? Because
She was Jacob's.
well, yeah, but
No, Leah, I think.
Leah's, because this would have been his sister, his mother's handmaiden, and his like stepmother, kind of, because she gave birth to like several of his brothers.
Well, I did write an extensive thing about this, but first I have verse 18 about Benjamin. So literally it reads as son of the right, Ben Yamin. Rashi writes that he was called so because he was born in the land of Canaan, which is in the south, Yamin, as one comes from Aram Naharaim. Nachmanides writes that the meaning is son of strength because in the right hand there's strength and success, as in reading in verses like in Ecclesiastic, Psalm, and Psalms. And also, Benoni is a name of a chess opening. Yeah.
I think
Son of
doesn't
my pain.
Benoni mean son of sorrow?
Yeah,
yeah,
the
son of
name his
sorrow.
mother gave him was son of
Yeah.
my sorrow.
Well, she died when she gave birth to him, so she was sad, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's for the meaning of Ben Oni, yeah, son of sorrow, but also son of vigor is another possible translation. Yeah, but given the freedom with which biblical characters play with names and their meanings, there is no reason to exclude the possibility that Rachel is punningly invoking both meanings.
Yeah.
Minor
So-
correction, Bilhah was actually Rachel's handmaiden, but yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
Please continue.
I just wanted to mention, you mentioned how Benjamin can mean the son of the south. How does right mean south? Like nowadays, everyone's used to having north at the top of the map, but this wasn't always true. This was something that was kind of established by European explorers. In Judaism, even nowadays, like and I guess in the Middle Eastern culture, east was normally the top of a map, or east was up. So if you would turn right to go south, you would turn left to go north.
Oh, that makes sense. Orient
yeah.
everything towards the sunrise.
Like when Google
Yeah.
Maps flips, and you're like, I thought I was heading north, but you're heading south.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something. Yeah, I mean, like,
So
On that.
I've read I've written some like 1.5 commentary on verse 22. So it is debated between Jewish writers if Reuben did indeed sleep with Bilhah or not. David Kimchi, Rashbam, and Abarbanel, and several midrashim of Chazal, like Bereshit Rabbah 87.5, write that Reuben did sleep with Bilhah. David Kimchi explained that Reuben thought of Bilhah merely as his father's concubine and not his wife. However, most commentators and the Talmud and other midrashim write that Reuben did not sleep with Bilhah. So, according to the Talmud Shabbat 55b, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani said that Rabbi Yonatan said, anyone who says that Reuben sinned with Bilhah is nothing other than mistaken, as it is stated, now the sons of Jacob were 12. This teaches that even after the incident involving Bilhah, all of the brothers were equal in righteousness. How then do I establish the meaning of the verse, and he lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine? This verse teaches that Reuben rearranged his father's bed, and the verse ascribes to him as if he had actually lain with Bilhah. It further reads why he has done so. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, How then do I establish the meaning of the verse, and he lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine? It is understood as follows. He protested the affront to his mother. He said, if my mother's sister Rachel was a rival to my mother Leah, will my mother's sister concubine be a rival to my mother? He immediately stood and rearranged her bed. Yeah, so it's not really sleeping. He just rearranged the bed. It's
As a show of
Um,
dominance, or it sounds like a dog peeing on a bed. But
I just
yeah,
want to say there is I actually literally has it in the translation of this very like human readable translation, and it brings in these things. It literally doesn't even translate it literally. It translates it as um Ruvain moved the bed of Jacob from where it lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, as a protest that Jacob had not moved his bed to Leah's tent after Rachel's passing. So after Rachel died, he I guess he assumed that his father should move his bed into the tent with his mother Leah, and instead he was with one of the concubines, so he moved the bed.
yeah.
And
I
it's not
honestly
even like a
don't think
commentary.
you're gonna lose your priority line for the rights of the firstborn over that. And you'll see later that he does, but that's quite a ways to come. Spoiler alert.
Mm.
I will. No, go on.
I was just thinking, if we have time, Genesis 36 is just all names. If we powered through it.
No, there's actually, I have some commentaries for the verses, several verses.
Yeah.
So, I'll add that Nachmanides adds another explanation. In line with the simple meaning of scripture, it is possible that Reuben disturbed the couch of Bilhah because he feared that she might give birth again from Jacob, for he, being the firstborn and thinking of taking 2 portions of the inheritance, would thus lose more than all the brothers. He had no fear of his mother, for she was elderly. Silpah had perhaps died, or it may be that he had concern for his mother's honor. And since Silpah was her handmaid, he did not disturb her. And now the Israel herd part. In the Hebrew Bible, the verse is cut. Like there is a verse, and then there's empty space, and then the verse just continues. So, cut from the and Israel heard and now the sons, which suggests that there was a continuation of the verse that was cut off or edited out. The Septuagint adds, and it seemed evil in his sight. Targum Jonathan expands on this verse. And Israel heard it, and it afflicted him, and he said, alas, that one should have come forth from me so profane, even as Ishmael came forth from Abraham, and Esau from my father. The Spirit of holiness answered and thus spoke to him, fear not, for all are righteous, and none of them is profane.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah. Jacob later on addresses this in Genesis 49:4, where he condemns Reuben for this act, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, Lilith, you said that the next chapter was all names, but it's also 40 verses.
Oh, you're right. I just didn't want to start with it next week, but I mean, we may have to.
Don't worry, I'll say it. I'll read through all of this.
I can help as well.
You can take turns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Verse 23. These sons of Leah, Reuven, Jacob's firstborn, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun. The sons of Rachel, Yosef, Binyamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maid, Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Silpah, Leah's maid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, at Kiryath Arba, now Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had sojourned. Isaac was 180 years old when he breathed his last and died. He was gathered to his kin in ripe old age, and he was buried by his sons Esau and Jacob.
Okay. Isaac volunteered, and I don't know if he wants to do this, but can you, in about 15 minutes, power through this?
Oh, the whole chapter?
Yeah.
Well, I did have some commentary on several verses.
All right, tell him where to stop.
Wait, I need to open this because um well, I have verse 2, verse 3, 24, 32, and 33.
Okay.
Which
So
is the
you
three?
read what was it? Verse 2 and 3.
Yeah, and then 24, 32,
Okay.
and
So
33.
you read the first paragraph then.
Yeah,
I
I'll read.
or
I'll
he.
read all of the descendants of Esav, and then stop, and then you do the commentary on 2 and 3, and then we'll do the next bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then actually, sorry, I do have a bit once we get to verse 8. So
Okay, so you
Okay.
enjoyed that bit. So I will do 19 verses now.
Okay.
Okay. And these are the generations of Esav. That is, he was also called Edom. Esav took his wives from the daughters of Canaan, Ada, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Aholibama, the daughter of Anna, daughter of Sivoin the Chivite, and also Basmas, daughter of Yishmael, sister of Nevayoth. Ada bore Eliphaz to Esav, and Basmath bore Reuel. That's such a hard name. Aholibama,
Oholibama.
yeah, Aholibama bore Yeush and Yalam and Korach. These are the sons of Esav who were born to him in the land of Canaan. And Esav took his wives, his sons, and his daughters, and all the people of his household, and his cattle, and all his animals, and all his property that he had acquired in the land of Canaan, and he went to another land because of his brother Jacob. For their possession were too numerous for them to dwell together, and the land of their sojourning could not support them because of their livestock. So Esav dwelt on Mount Seir. Esav, that is Edom. And these are the generations of Esav, the progenitor of Edom on Mount Seir. These are the names of Esav's sons: Eliphaz, son of Ada, the wife of Esav; Reuel, son of Basmath, the wife of Esav. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zephyr, and Gatam, and Kenaz. And Timnah was a concubine to Eliphaz, son of Esav, and she bore to Eliphaz Amalek. These are the sons of Ada, the wife of Esav. And these are the sons of Reuel: Nachas, Zerach, Shama, Miza, and Miza. These are the sons of Basmas, the wife of Esav. And these are the sons of Aholibama, daughter of Anna, daughter of Ziboin, and Ziboin, the wife of Esav. She bore to Esav Yeush, Yalam, and Korach. These became the chieftains of the sons of Esav, the sons of Eliphaz, Esav's firstborn, chief Teman, chief Omar, chief Zephyr, and chief Kenaz. Chief Korach, chief Gatam, chief Amalek. These are the chieftains of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These are the sons of Ada. And these are the sons of Reuel, the son of Esav, chief Nachas, chief Zerach, chief Shama, chief Mizah. These are the chieftains of Reuel in the lands of Edom. These are the sons of Basmas, the wife of Esav. And these are the sons of Olibama, the wife of Esav, chief Yeush, chief Yalam, chief Korach. These are the chieftains of Olibama, daughter of Anna, the wife of Esau. So quite a lot of repetition in that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes, that was.
You
Oh, and
wanna
there's one more.
Yeah, one more.
These are the sons of Esav, and these are their chieftains. He is Edom. Yeah.
Okay. So about first, noticed in verse 2 that the names of the wives is different than previously. Rashi identifies Ada with Basemath from verse 20 from chapter 26:34,
Yeah.
and Oholibama as Judith. Rashi also identifies Basemath as Machalat. Moshe Weinfeld, a professor of the Bible, writes that errors might have been made when the genealogy was copied, and so the names are different because of that.
A nice admission.
Yeah.
I wish Christians could make it. But yeah, I mean, there's clearly an issue with different sources here and a redactor putting them together and not really smoothing it out.
And not only that, but once again, I want to remind you, this is God's everlasting message for all of humanity for all time.
Well, it wasn't when it was written. It was a genealogy for the Hebrew people, but it got upgraded. The new operating system came out, and I think it's struggling with the bandwidth, to be honest. But-
You know, somebody in the comments echoed what Orange just said. John Stern said, "What's amazing is how much pointless drivel there is in the Bible. If this was really the vessel for conveying God's message to humanity, why is all this fluff needed?" But on the other note, I appreciate Isaac. That was a lovely reading.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thank you for that. I'm going to try to power through these comments that have built up in the interim before we complete this. Dave H says, question, why did this God talk only to people in the past and he is strangely quiet now?
I don't, maybe we were his, or they were like his hyper focus, and then he's moved on to something else. I don't know. Maybe he's fucking about
Okay.
with something in Andromeda.
I think there are a couple of reasons for this. So, I mean, the first thing is some people still think that he's, very active and still talking to people, revealing stuff and whatnot. And other interpretations, which we will get to in later biblical texts, are that the age of prophecy is just over.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Mighty Jab offers $10. Thank you. Says, I spotted another, I think. Doesn't Isaac living to 180 contradict Genesis 6, where God says that humans would be limited to a lifespan of 120 years? Oh, gosh,
Well,
we hadn't
no,
noticed that
no,
contradiction
no,
before, had
no,
we?
no. I've commented on this
after.
before that several Jewish commentators have understood the verse differently. I don't remember exactly what it was, but that wasn't the interpretation that they have said.
I just have to say, I think it's insane that the last time we saw Isaac, he's blind and old and on his deathbed, and his sons are bringing him food, and he can't even get up, it seems, and he can't see which of his kids he's talking to. And then remember, this was at least 20 years later. Jacob runs away, works 14 years for his two wives, an additional who knows how many years of the, I'm just going to guesstimate 20 total. So, another 6 at least for the herds, flocks and herds, has more than a dozen kids, comes back decades later, and Isaac is still alive. In what universe?
Well, I did remember what it was. I think it was that they said that if somebody will sin in these 120 years, then he will create the flood or something like that. I don't remember. I think it was something in the lines of this, but okay.
And I think there is even a tradition that Isaac didn't pass away at that point. He passed away 12 years later, around when Joseph gets sold into slavery.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
This guy's immortal, and honestly, it sounds awful. He was already very sick. I don't want to live 40 years at that point. Like, that's not, okay.
I also
fine.
don't want to live 40 years.
Not when you're already bedridden and your children are grown and you're blind and you can't walk.
Yeah.
Not 40 years from there. No.
So Scott Weber offers $10. Thank you. And says, this is supposed to be the late Bronze Age. Why are there no mentions in the Bible about the great powers of the day? The Mycenaeans and the Minoans and Mitanni and Hittites are rarely mentioned.
Yeah,
Oh,
so it's
It
not
wasn't written then.
yeah, it's not from the late Bronze Age. And furthermore, later in this chapter, we will actually basically just see proof that it's not.
Okay, well, remind us when we get to that.
We'll do.
And then Scott Weber for $10. Thank you. Says this is supposed
he said
to
this
be,
is the same
wait,
thing.
I just read that one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Tesla Ranger says another long, boring genealogy that we are told to avoid in 1 Timothy 1-4, or excuse me, 1 Timothy 1:4 and Titus 3:9. Avoid foolish questions and genealogies. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Then Master Philbo says, I appreciate the answer on harm. I'm really enjoying this show and those on and those that are in the panel. As someone brought up in a Christian household, It's really informative. Thank you. Thank you very much for saying that. Then John Stern says, what's amazing is how much pointless drivel there is in the Bible. If this was really the vessel for conveying God's message to humanity,
We read this one.
why is
Yeah, I
all
think
this
Alondra read
fluff needed?
Yeah.
And then
Alondra read
Ivory
that.
Darkness throws in that I heard a bunch of Sir not appearing in this film in that chapter. And
Honestly, that's the best genealogy I've heard.
And then Jacques Polymer says, am I the only one who thinks biblical authors would have failed fourth grade math?
No.
Well, to be fair, math at the time wasn't as developed as we have now.
Pi is 3.
Yeah, right. Close enough. Close enough.
Good point.
In the
Yeah,
vicinity of
Yeah, they were
three.
onto it. They were getting
You
there.
take a string, you lay it out in a circle, and then you cut it, and then you take the
Well-
string, and that's how long it is.
Well,
Okay,
as
so
I
now
as
to
I'm
finish
indicating,
this chapter, we need to have Tomer thumb wrestle Isaac to determine who's going to read it.
I'm gonna read it.
Okay.
Yep. So should I read the commentary?
Well,
No.
my commentary is very extensive on two parts, but I don't think we'll get to
Okay,
that.
let's
Maybe
let
joking,
Tomer
I'm
close
joking.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Verse 20. These were the sons of Seir the Horite, who were settled in the land. Lotan, Shobal, Tzivon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, Dishan. Those are the clans of the Horites, the descendants of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Haimam, and Lotan's sister was Timnah. The sons of Shobal were these: Alvan, Manachat, Eval, Shepho, Onam. The sons of Tzivon were these: Aya and Anah. That was the Anah who discovered the hot springs in the wilderness while pasturing the asses of his father Tzivon. The children of Anah were these: Dishon and Anah's daughter Oholibama. The sons of Dishon were these: Chemdan, Eshban, Yitran, Cheran. The sons of Etzer were these: Bilhan, Za'avan, and Akan. The sons of Dishon were these: Utz and Aran. These are the clans of the Horites, the clans Lotan, Shoval, Tzivon, Anah. Dishon, Etzer, Dishan. Those are the clans of the Horites, clan by clan in the land of Seir. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites. Bela, son of Beor, reigned in Edom, and the name of his city was Dinhaba. When Bela died, Yobav, son of Zerach from Botzra, succeeded him as king. When Yobav died, Husham of the land of the Temanites succeeded him as king. When Husham died, Hadad, son of Bedad, who defeated the Midianites in the country of Moab, succeeded him as king. The name of his city was Avit. When Hadad died, Samlah of Masreka succeeded him as king. When Samlah died, Shaul of Rehovot Hanahar succeeded him as king. When Shaul died, Baal Hanan, son of Achbor, succeeded him as king. And when Baal Hanan, son of Achbor, died, Hadar succeeded him as king. The name of his city was Pau, and his wife's name was Mehitabel, daughter of Matred, daughter of Meizahav. Those are the names of the clans of Esau, each with its families and locality, name by name. The clans Timnah, Alva, Yetet, Oholibama, Elah, Pinon, Kenaz, Teiman, Miftzar, Magdiel, Aram. Those are the clans of Edom, that is of Esau, father of the Edomites, by their settlements in the land which they hold.
Yay.
The king is dead. Long live the king.
I'm glad that we are done with that genealogy. But so my big comment here is when they're talking about the kings, there were no kings in Israel yet.
No.
I also have one for this.
Okay, I'm gonna finish mine first. So essentially, the earliest that it could have been in terms of Israelite history would have been with Saul, and it's mentioned even. And in terms of kingship, so when people are talking about Mosaic authorship, this list of kings lists kings and a time period that Moses was not around for.
And specifically says there were no kings in Israel. This is before there were kings in Israel.
Yeah.
Moses, long before there were any kings.
Right. So this is a clear indication that this was written later,
Much later.
after these kings.
Yeah.
Well, after, I mean,
so-
these were the Edomite kings, but after there were kings in Israel to even talk about,
Yeah.
or to reference a time before them. And I mentioned another one where they gave the name of a place that, this was several weeks ago, another chapter, but I believe they did it again here, where they gave the name of a place that we read in later stories was the new name that had been given after the conquest of Joshua, or after one of the subsequent conquests, because of course they had to, take over the land slowly under the judges. So yeah, you've got multiple lines of evidence that this was written long after Moses.
Well, I have my commentary here. So
I'm
several
just wishing that I had read that, because it would have been so much fun if Tomer had his camera on so we could see his face. But when I read, when Bela died, Jobab, son of Zerah, and Bozrah.
You are a cruel man. You are a very cruel man.
You realize if we're wrong and Tomer goes to hell, that's going to be his torture. They'll strap him to a chair and have Aaron reading Hebrew names.
Aaron,
in
I
his
had
most
I had a
southern
different
voice.
idea. Since Christians are so fond of legislation, I think in America they should make it mandatory to read out the names correctly and have Tomer in charge of deciding if they do. That would get rid of Christianity within 1 or 2 years, I guess.
I appreciate like the native pronunciation of these genealogies. It helped us to speed through it. Because we'd be like, if we were like English speakers and doing this, we'd be like, and what's his name? And so thank you, Tomer and Isaac, who studied the.
Yeah, I have my commentary on what Lawrence said, but do we have time?
Yep, take it away. Let's finish it up.
So several commentators like Ibn Ezra, Rashbam, and Chizkuni write that this refers to Moses as he was also considered as king. Ibn Ezra writes that several commentators say that this records a prophecy. He also mentioned a scholar named Yitzchaki, possibly referring to Isaac Israeli ben Solomon, who claimed that this chapter was composed during the reign of Jehoshaphat. For that, Ibn Ezra writes, he explained the generations as he saw fit. Was he not rightly named Yitzchak? Everyone that heard his interpretation will laugh at him. Far be it for one to believe that our chapter was written in the days of Jehoshaphat, as Yitzchaki maintains. Indeed, his book is fit to be burned. Why did Yitzchaki maintain that it is possible for 8 Edomite kings to have reigned before Moses, when we find double the number of kings in Israel in about the same number of years? Furthermore, there were also proportionately many more kings of Judah in the same time period that the 8 Edomite kings who also reigned till the age of Moses. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me the amount of vitriol that has come from believers when you point out that it's quite evident that Moses didn't write any of this, and there are so many points where that's painfully clear. But I have to say, trying to pretend it's all prophecy, just extremely specific prophecies about the future to them, while they don't mention anything that was actually occurring at the time accurately. I mean, the cope
And
is so hard.
I also had a commentary for verse 24 about the and now discover the hot springs. So the word that is translated as hot springs is yamim, and its meaning is actually unclear. It could be interpreted as yamim, which refers to hot springs, as I said. Targum Onkelos and Nachmanides interpret this as mighty men, as yamim could refer to the Emites, which are described in Deuteronomy 2:10 as a people strong and numerous. Others, like Rashi, Gersonides, and the Talmud, refer to the Yamim as mules, i.e., Anah crossed an ass and a mare, and he discovered the mule. They were called that because the fear, Eimah, of them lies upon people.
Mules are pretty stubborn creatures.
Have you finished your commentary, Tomer?
Yeah, I finished.
Okay, good.
Can I just say, guys, I've got to go now.
I
Okay.
own you.
All right.
So I'll see you again sometime. I don't know when.
All right.
Take
But
care of yourself,
I
Adam.
will watch every week.
Thank you much, Adam.
Okay.
See you later.
Thank
All right,
you
I'm
for
going to run
joining.
through these chats as quick as I can. Trevor Wright said, all name changes of people mentioned in the Bible, like Jacob to Israel, was done to transform him into a moral example, but he deceived Esau. I think he failed to be morally good. Yeah, I've noticed that trend in the Bible as well.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. They're all horrible people.
The thing about
And-
naming conventions in the Bible is when you give someone a new name, you're essentially putting them under you as a servant. So this is not necessarily something about a moral example, but more, having Jacob as a servant to God. It interpreted his new role.
It's
So
not
he-
leveling up like Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White.
So it's more like, I own you now. Your name is now this.
Yeah, essentially. We kind of get that with
Lovely.
in I forget which king it was. Was it Zedekiah? But there was so after the or I guess during the Babylonian invasion, right? I guess during the exile. There was I forget which king it was, but he was renamed. I think it was Zedekiah.
Might have
No,
been.
was it Mattaniah? I think it was Mattaniah. Yeah, there was a renaming there. Essentially, just new rulership.
Right.
Okay, then the
I own
Mighty
you now.
Jav says, oh, Aaron, I think that your time machine should be called a chronovisor. I can't remember where I heard that name, but I remember a story with that similar device, and they called it that.
I
Okay,
like it.
thank you. Then the Mighty Jav again says, wait, no, I was remembering it wrong. It was a crazy church father who claimed that he had such a device. Then
It was
Dave
really just
H.
shrooms.
Dave H says, question, was Jesus considered to be a king or a god at that time? And if a god, who was in heaven?
Are we talking about during Bible times? Like,
Well, I'm
obviously
guessing they're
not
talking
now.
about when Jesus was presumably alive.
Yeah, no. He we'll be discussing when we get there the elevation of him from prophet to demigod to Superman
Yeah.
god through the
So
Gospels.
in his own words, it's you
theologically.
that say that I am.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very it's the theology that has been drawn out from this has been drawn out from so little. When you really look at what remains in canon, there's a lot of non-canonical stuff that's a lot more explicit and dramatic, but they couldn't sell that as being authentic. So it's let's just say opinions differed, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't considered anything like the modern version of divine in his day, presuming he actually had one.
And you're not. It's not. The question is not asking if Jesus was alive during these events in this chapter.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
They're just talking about when Jesus was supposed to be alive. Was he a king or a god? And if you just look at what Jesus himself said, no. So Grady Matt said, I wonder if the biblical text says if there was a referee to score Jacob's wrestling match with an angel. Maybe there was a few angels and it turned into a triple threat match.
No, I'd love to see God wrestling Jacob, and Michael's there on the sideline, and Gabriel's like subtly cheering on Jacob, but pretending to cheer on God.
And the referees, like on wrestling, they pretend like they didn't see God cheat, and
oh yeah, totally.
hit him
And
in
then
the
he's
nuts.
like doing the countdown, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the
Take
last
it to
one.
the chair.
Last one, super sticker from Elizabeth Chris for $10. Thank you. Says, pair character borrowing down saying thank you.
No, that's a description. That is a description of the.
Oh, it's a little picture. Look at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Aw.
Okay.
Aw, that's so sweet.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you,
that.
Elizabeth.
Lilith, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't be upset about supposedly getting older. You still look lovely.
Thank you. Well, I didn't mention how much older I am, and I won't be doing so. So
Okay, well, You kind of gave a hint about that when I told you last week that you will finally be legal, and you laughed so hard.
Mhm.
Well, there's flattery, and then there's just overkill love.
And before we leave this chapter, like the genealogies are boring to a lot of people, including me. But there's the context of retrofitting them to prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jesus was the son of David, so this is what, and then creationists use it to determine the age of the earth as well. The
Oh, yeah.
genealogies.
David
So
Usher
there's- yeah,
did it to, like, what was it, 9 o'clock in the morning on a Monday? He said creation happened at 9 a.m. on a Monday.
In
I don't
October.
know how we got that, but yeah, there you go. There you go. So,
Yeah, there is
believe
a
it or
Jewish
not,
tradition that gives it a date and day of the week.
there you
Because
go.
I think the tradition is that the sixth day is the first day of the year. God
Okay.
created man, and that was Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the year. So the date would be whatever 6 days before that.
6
All
days
right.
before Rosh Hashanah. There you
Yeah.
go.
So we'll be doing chapter 37 next week.
Looking forward
Mhm.
to it.
All right.
Getting
and,
into the Joseph story, very exciting.
Yep.
All right,
Yes,
so
we get
we're a little bit over time, so I'm just gonna
Well,
close
we'll
it up
get to
quickly. Thank you for the large panel. Much of I so appreciate what this team does.
I do too.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
you.
It's I have to say, it's a wonderful birthday present to be on YouTube with Aaron and all of you and just having a good time with friends. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. And
happy birthday.
I hope
Thank you
everyone's able
very
to
much.
get something of value out of it and hopefully a few laughs along the way.
Peter, take us out.